Active reading. Active reading is best described as reading with a pen. It is a way for you to keep track of your thoughts, ideas, questions, and what's happening while you're reading. In this activity, we'll go through a poem and actively read it together. The first step in active reading is to read the piece. Eventually, you will read the piece multiple times, each time building up your comprehension and making more connections. For the purposes of our demonstration, we're going to read the Skyboat Song by Sir Harold Bolton. I will do our first read-through. Speed, bonny boat, like a bird on the wing, onward the sailors cry. Carry the lad that's born to be king over the sea to sky. Loud the winds cry, loud the waves roar, thunderclaps rend the air. Baffled our foes, stand by the shore, follow they will not dare. Many's the lad fought on that day, well the claymore could wield. When the night came, silently lay dead on Culloden's field. Burned are our homes, exile and death scatter the loyal men. Yet ere the sword cool in the sheath, Scotland will rise again. After reading the poem, there are a couple of things that stand out. The 4 stanzas, the rhyme pattern, even the rhythm of the words themselves sound more like a song than they do a poem. The question becomes, does the song exist? And the answer to that is yes.
Speed, bonny boat, like a bird on the wing, onward the sailors cry. Carry the lad that's born to be king over the sea to sky. Loud the wind howls, loud the waves roar, thunderclaps rend the air. Baffled our foes, stand by the shore, follow they will not dare. Speed, bonny boat, like a bird on the wing, onward the sailors cry. Carry the lad that's born to be king over the sea to sky.
What we know now, after listening to just a portion of the song, is that that first stanza, Speed, bonny boat, like a bird on the wing, is actually the chorus. The other 3 stanzas are the verses, making this a much longer song than it is a poem. Now that we've read the poem and we've listened to part of it in song, our next step is to go back through and identify key words and phrases that either 1, we're unfamiliar with, or 2, we feel are important to the overall meaning. Focus on things that have been repeated. The repetition generally means it's an important piece. For instance, the word sky is repeated several times. Sky, sky. It's put in relation to the lad that's born to be king. We also talk about baffled foes, claymore, dead on Culloden's field, burned homes, exiled death, Scotland will rise again. These are all important phrases, some of which we know, some of which we have to look up. And that's our next step. Now that we have all of this, we need to do a little research so that we understand what exactly is going on. After identifying words and phrases, go back through and ask yourself questions. For instance, who is the lad who's born to be king? Who's fighting? What is Culloden's field? Why are there burned homes? Why is there exile? Why is there death? Once you've identified words and phrases that are important or that you don't know, and you've started asking questions about the piece itself, your next job is to start finding the answers. Use your resources, people, books, the internet, to look up those words and phrases that you don't know. Oftentimes, the answers to your questions lie in understanding the words and phrases that are important. Skye is an island off the coast of Scotland. The claymore is a large two-handed sword predominantly used by Highlanders prior to the 19th century. According to Educate Scotland, Culloden's Field is in reference to the Battle of Culloden, fought 16 April 1746 near Inverness. It was the last and bloodiest of all the Jacobite battles. Jacobites were Highlanders led by Charles Edward Stuart, who were trying to overthrow the current King of England and replace it with a Stuart, a Catholic king. That means that baffled our foes means the British, and lad born to be king means Charles Edward Stuart. Burned homes, exile, and death reference what happened after the Battle of Culloden was fought. The clearances took place late in the 18th century after the Battle of Culloden was lost. It cleared off estates from about 1780 forward. That meant clan lands, traditional clan villages, things like that were completely wiped out. In addition, it instituted things like laws that prevented or prohibited the speaking of Gaelic, the wearing of the plaid or the tartan, and also known as the kilt, and basically destroyed the Highlanders' culture, all as a means of retribution for the Jacobite uprising. Now, with that information, when we read the poem, it makes a little bit more sense. Speed, bonny boat, like a bird on the wing, onward the sailors cry. Carry the lad that's born to be king over the sea to Skye. Well, we didn't really find out why he was going to Skye. That requires more investigation. Going back to Educate Scotland and looking more deeply into what happened after the Battle of Culloden, we find some basic information. Charles Edward Stuart fled the battlefield and escaped Scotland with the help of Flora MacDonald. He fled to Skye, where he then took a boat to France, where he was able to hide from the British. So that makes more sense now. Over the sea to Skye, the lad born to be king, he bailed. He left his Scottish army, whoever was left and survived, to deal with the British and suffer the repercussions on their own, not caring what would happen after the failure of the rising. Loud the winds cry, loud the waves roar, thunderclaps rend the air. Baffled our foes, stand by the shore, follow they will not dare. That's obviously talking about Prince Charlie's flight from the battlefield to the Isle of Skye. Because the sea separating Skye from mainland Scotland is so treacherous, only experienced boaters could really get across. And obviously, because the British did not get it, they were baffled, they were not really prepared to follow because they knew it would be their own undoing. Many's the lad fought on that day, well the claymore could wield. Again, claymore was the Highlanders' weapon. When the night came, silently lay, dead on Culloden's field. That references the number of dead for the Scottish army, because they were decimated. Flat surface, extremely advanced British army, they didn't stand a chance. They literally brought a knife to a gunfight. Burned are our homes, exile and death, scatter the loyal men. Yet ere the sword cool in the sheath, Scotland will rise again. Part of this particular stanza talks about the clearances, bringing attention to the idea that people were displaced. This is when we saw a lot of immigration, both from Scotland to Ireland and Scotland to the New World. Scattered the loyal men also goes back to that idea of clearances, that these Scottish people, the Highlanders specifically, were taken off their land and forced elsewhere. Yet ere the sword cool in the sheath, Scotland will rise again. Ultimately, what we have is a song of hope. In one respect, it romanticizes Charles Edward Stuart, who's later known as Bonnie Prince Charlie. He becomes a tragic figure, someone who has to be whisked away to keep that hope alive for Scotland. However, it also memorializes those who died at Culloden's Field and brings focus to the clearances, the people who lost their land, their livelihood, their way of life following the failed Jacobite uprising. Let's review the steps to active reading. Step 1. Read. Read the piece all the way through. You may need to read it more than once to start putting things together, but that initial read will help you start to pull out ideas, questions, and important words and phrases that you may need to look up later. Step 2. Look it up. Do the research. Use your sources. Find your answers. And don't just accept the shallow answers. It's okay to dig further. It's okay to know more. The more knowledge you have about this subject, the better you're going to understand whatever you're reading. Finally, reread. Now that you have that basic information that you needed, things you didn't understand or thought were important, go back and reread the piece. You should have more understanding about what's going on now. If you find you have more questions or more connections you need to make, you can repeat the process. Look it up, reread. Look it up, reread. That's the whole purpose of active reading, to break it down into what you need it to be in order to understand what you're reading. With short pieces, this process can be very quick. They're short, there's not much there. With longer pieces, such as short stories or even novels, you may find that you have to actively read as you're going. Rereading doesn't necessarily happen right then and there. It could be that you read a chapter, taking notes on questions that you have, things you need to look up, and then go back and find out their meaning, putting it all together that way. There's nothing wrong with that. There is no real wrong way to actively read. As we go through the semester, as you're working on your project individually, practice active reading. This will help you, 1, understand what you're reading, and 2, keep track of things that you need to make connections to for your project and for things in class, such as analyses or simple quizzes. This process can also be used when you're watching something or listening to something. Same thing, you simply replace read with listen or watch. Now that you've practiced active reading, you're ready to go do it on your own. Remember, every time you do it, you're going to get better, the process is going to get easier and faster. Don't get discouraged. It's okay to take it in small chunks. It's okay to work at your own pace. In fact, that's the purpose of active reading, so you can do it at a pace you can understand and that you're comfortable with. Happy reading!